My name is Adam McAllister, 34 years old, born and raised in Vermont, but I've spent most of my adult life in Seattle, Washington. I'm a software consultant. Not flashy, not rich, but I make enough to live on my own terms. My sister, Caroline, is 2 years older than me and has always had this shine, the kind of person people call a natural leader. But if you ask me, she's more manipulative than magnetic. She's been living back east, close to our parents, helping them in their final years. Or so I thought. Our parents passed away suddenly, within 6 months of each other. Mom had a heart attack. Dad followed after a stroke. I flew back for both funerals, but Caroline handled all the arrangements, the paperwork, the logistics. I didn't ask too many questions at the time. I was too numb, too distracted by grief and guilt for not being closer. I figured she'd keep things honest. We'd always had our differences, sure, but she was family. I thought that still meant something. A few weeks after Dad's funeral, Caroline called and said we needed to get the estate settled. She asked if I could sign some paperwork remotely so she could finalize everything with the attorney. I didn't think much of it. She sent over a packet, 40 pages, mostly legalese, but with highlighted sections for signatures. I skimmed the first few paragraphs, saw the names of our parents, and assumed it was all in good faith. So I signed. And that's the moment everything started to unravel. At first, nothing seemed unusual. I went back to Seattle, returned to work, and tried to move on. Caroline was quiet, but that wasn't surprising. She grieved differently. But then I started hearing things. From our parents' old friends. From our aunt in Connecticut. People kept asking what I planned to do with the lake house, or how I'd spend the inheritance, or when I was flying back for the reading of the will. I kept saying the same thing. What will? What lake house? Our parents owned 2 properties, the family home and a lakeside cabin we'd spend summers at as kids. I thought they were still in probate, still being processed. That's what Caroline told me. But something didn't add up. I called the attorney whose name was on the paperwork I signed. His assistant told me he no longer represented Caroline and hadn't for weeks. That was red flag number 1. Red flag number 2? When I requested a copy of the full estate file, I was told I wasn't listed as a beneficiary, not even mentioned. And that's when I realized my sister didn't just trick me into signing documents. She tricked me into signing away everything. The house, the cabin, the accounts, even my dad's vintage Mustang. All of it had somehow legally gone to her. I sat there in my apartment, holding the documents in my hand, and my blood went cold. She'd stolen our parents' legacy, and she did it with a smile. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled up every email, every file, every notarized page. I started piecing together a timeline. My parents had rewritten their wills 2 years ago, something I hadn't known. Caroline was executor, and over the last few months of their lives, they'd allegedly updated a few things. According to her, they had grown concerned that I wasn't financially stable enough to manage my share. She even included a fake-sounding note supposedly written by my dad. But my dad hated email. He dictated everything to Mom. There's no way he suddenly typed out a letter about excluding me from the estate. It stunk. All of it. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go. She wanted to play games. I'd play too, but I'd play smarter. I wasn't the golden child. I wasn't the favorite. But I had something she didn't expect. Patience, logic, and a very long memory. And as I would soon learn, Caroline wasn't as clever as she thought she was. After realizing I'd been cut out of everything, I didn't confront her right away. Caroline was a master manipulator. Confront her too soon, and she'd spin it. Cry, accuse, make me look like the unstable younger brother. I'd seen her do it before, with exes, coworkers, even our parents.
But this time, I had an advantage. She didn't know I knew. Not yet. So I played dumb. I texted her the next morning, casual, polite, asking if she'd heard anything from the estate lawyer. She replied almost instantly. Still waiting on final docs. Legal stuff is so slow. I almost laughed out loud. That emoji, like she hadn't already stolen every last dollar. But it told me something important. She thought I was still in the dark. Good. That gave me time. I started digging. I called an old friend of my dad's, Mr. Riley, who used to manage their taxes. He was surprised to hear from me, but when I told him I was confused about the estate, he got quiet. I shouldn't say much, he said, but your father was always clear. Everything was to be split 50-50. No exceptions. That's what I thought. So where had things gone sideways? Riley didn't have full access anymore, but he gave me a name, the notary who handled the last batch of paperwork before Dad's stroke, a woman named Melanie who worked at a small office downtown. I flew back to Vermont that weekend and walked in without an appointment. She remembered my sister instantly. Very organized, very persistent, she said. Came in 3 times in 1 week. I asked her if she recalled the document my dad supposedly signed, the one that excluded me. Melanie hesitated, then said something that made my stomach drop. He didn't sign that one in front of me, she said. Caroline brought it in later and said he'd already signed it at home, just needed it stamped. That was fraud, plain and simple. I thanked her and walked out with a tight jaw. Caroline forged a legal document and used it to steal our family's entire estate. I had proof now, not just suspicion, but I needed more. I needed her to admit it. I needed leverage. That's when I called a buddy of mine from college, Paul, a corporate investigator who'd helped companies sniff out internal fraud. I explained the situation, and he agreed to help me quietly. Within 2 weeks, he got me everything. Bank statements, property transfers, even emails between Caroline and the attorney she'd hired to quietly move assets into a trust under her name only. But the best part? One email she accidentally sent to her assistant, not her lawyer. In it, she joked, "He's a mess anyway. What's he gonna do, sue me from his basement?" She had no idea I didn't live in a basement. I lived in a condo I paid for myself. She had no idea I was smarter than she'd ever given me credit for. I printed every document, organized them into a thick file. Then I mailed her a copy. No note, no warning, just the truth. She called me that night, furious. "What the hell is this?" she screamed into the phone. "You went behind my back?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. I just said, "I know what you did. I have enough to bury you legally. Unless you want this to go to court, you have 48 hours to make it right." She went silent. Then she hung up. The next day, I got a call from her lawyer, a different one this time. He sounded panicked. "Mr. McAllister, I've been authorized to discuss a possible settlement." That's when I knew I had her. She wasn't going to confess. She wasn't going to apologize, but she was scared, and I was just getting started. I didn't want a payout. I didn't want half. I wanted everything, because she had stolen from me, lied to my face, and insulted the people we both claimed to love. And when I was done, she would wish she'd never tried to play me. Caroline's lawyer sent over a draft settlement the next morning, a 60-40 split, heavily favoring her, of course. She even had the audacity to include a clause that required both parties to agree to keep the matter private and refrain from future legal action. Classic Caroline. Cover her tracks, cash out, and pretend nothing happened. I didn't even bother responding. Instead, I filed a formal petition to contest the will, publicly, legally, and most importantly, loudly. Within 2 days, Caroline was served. I made sure it was done at her office, in front of the board of the company she now ran, the same one our parents helped her start with their retirement savings. Humiliation was never my goal, but I wasn't going to shield her anymore. She weaponized silence for years. I wasn't playing that game. The thing is, when you challenge a forged will, it opens everything. Financials, emails, documents, Discovery is brutal. Caroline thought she could bury the truth under a few fake signatures and legal jargon, but now everything was under review by real investigators. And then came the twist I never saw coming. During the court proceedings, her assistant, the one she accidentally emailed, was subpoenaed. Turns out she didn't want to go down for Caroline's scheme. She handed over messages, voice notes, and a calendar entry from 6 months before Dad's stroke. One entry simply read, "Lunch with notary, prep form before Dad signs." But he never signed it, because 3 days later he was in the hospital, already losing basic motor function. The court didn't even need a full trial after that. Caroline's trust was frozen, the judge ruled the will invalid, and since the original, unaltered will clearly stated a 50-50 split, that's where it reverted. But I wasn't done. Not after everything. I launched a civil suit for damages, emotional and financial. Caroline tried to countersue, but the court laughed her out. She ended up paying my legal fees, too. The final blow? I bought her house. At auction, when she had to sell it to cover debts and court penalties. I didn't even move in. I just made sure she knew I owned it. Her lawyer called me again, offering an apology on behalf of his client. I told him to lose my number. And Caroline, she emailed me once. Just one line. "You always wanted to beat me." I stared at it for a while. Then I replied, "No, I just wanted you to stop lying." I never heard from her again. I moved to Seattle not long after and used my share of the estate to launch a nonprofit in my parents' name, one they would have been proud of. It helps kids from broken families find legal guidance and safe homes. Because if I learned anything, it's that family doesn't protect you just because they're family. Real loyalty is a choice. And some people, even the ones you grow up with, choose greed every single time.
After everything, the court battle, the depositions, the financial audits, I thought I'd feel victorious, maybe even satisfied. But what I actually felt, sitting in my empty apartment surrounded by court transcripts and bank statements, was exhaustion. You don't come out of a war with your own blood without scars, even if you win. Still, the fact that justice was on my side gave me a strange kind of peace. I didn't need revenge that burned hot. I wanted something colder, sharper, more permanent. Caroline was forced to sell almost everything she owned. Her savings? Gone. Her company? It collapsed the moment the board learned the trust she'd bragged about was built on a lie. Turns out investors don't love embezzlement and forged wills. Shocking. When her house went up for auction, I bought it anonymously. I never set foot inside. I didn't need to. I just wanted her to know that her empire now had my name on the deed. I mailed her the notice in a plain envelope, no return address. Just the official property transfer with my name highlighted. She moved into a small rental 2 towns over. Her once busy social media presence dried up overnight. No more luxury brunches, no more staged family-first photos, just silence. And while she disappeared, I rebuilt. I took my share of the estate and opened the Allen Foundation, named after our father. It wasn't flashy. A legal support network for young adults navigating toxic families, inheritance battles, or abusive dynamics. It got attention quickly. Local press picked it up, eventually even national coverage. One article was titled, "From Family Betrayal to Family Justice, the Story Behind the Allen Foundation." That was the first time I ever told the full truth publicly. I didn't name Caroline, but everyone in our town knew, and she knew, especially when that article went viral. I got messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years, old teachers, neighbors, even a few of her former friends. Some wanted to check in. Others just wanted gossip. But most said the same thing. I had no idea. Yeah, that's how Caroline worked. She didn't destroy with fire. She did it with paper cuts.
quiet, legal, almost invisible, until you bled out. I kept every document from the case, every forged signature, every email, not to hold it over her, but as a reminder that what she tried to erase, who my parents really were, what they built, what they meant, couldn't be stolen, at least not forever. And one night, about a year after everything ended, I got a letter. Not from her, but from our mother's old lawyer. It was dated 5 years before her death, marked confidential. Inside was a sealed handwritten note from Mom. I'll never forget the first line. If you're reading this, it means Caroline found a way to get to everything first. My hands shook reading it. My mother knew. She went on to describe conversations she overheard, documents she feared would be altered, and her desperate hope that I'd be strong enough to fight back. At the end, she wrote, "They can take the house, the money, the things, but not your name, not your mind, and not your heart. I love you, and I'm proud of you no matter how hard it gets." I cried. For the first time in years, not from pain, but from finally feeling seen, even across time. My parents weren't perfect, but they didn't deserve what Caroline did to their legacy, and I didn't deserve to be treated like a background character in my own family. Not anymore.
The day I stood in front of a packed auditorium and gave a keynote speech on family betrayal and estate fraud, I realized how far I'd come. A year ago, I was chasing forged documents in a dusty file cabinet. Now, people flew across the country to hear me speak. But that wasn't the victory. The real win came quietly, in pieces. In every email from someone saying, "Your story saved me." In every young person who walked into the Allen Foundation office terrified they were going to lose everything, and walked out knowing they had power. Caroline still lived 2 towns over. We hadn't spoken since the trial, but I'd heard things. She tried applying for jobs in her field, all turned her away. The industry wasn't interested in a woman with a public court loss tied to inheritance fraud. Word gets around. A mutual friend told me she was working part-time at a boutique and barely making rent. I didn't feel joy hearing that, but I didn't feel pity either. Choices have consequences. Hers finally caught up to her. One afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. It was her. Her voice was quiet. Not angry, not smug, just hollow. She said, "I just wanted you to know I read Mom's letter too, the one she left with the lawyer." I stayed silent. She added, "I thought I was doing what they would have wanted. I thought I deserved more, but maybe I didn't understand them at all." I said nothing for a few seconds. Then just, "You didn't." She replied, "I'm sorry," and hung up. I haven't heard from her since. That call didn't change anything. She was still the person who tried to erase me from my own family. But maybe, just maybe, she finally understood the weight of what she'd done. I didn't need to ruin her. Life did that on its own. My victory wasn't in watching her fall. It was in rising without her help. I bought a new house last month. Modest, quiet, nothing like the old estate, but it has a garden like the one Mom used to keep. I planted lilacs there, her favorite. Every morning I walk outside, coffee in hand, and look over the flowers. It doesn't bring her back. It doesn't fix everything, but it grounds me. My life isn't about proving her wrong anymore, or proving I deserved the inheritance. It's about rebuilding something honest, something no one can steal. If you asked me now what I learned from all this, I'd tell you this. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who honors your truth. And when people try to write you out of your own story, pick up the pen and write it louder. Write it better. Write it in ink they can't erase.